Hello and welcome. I am Michelle Swan Young. Today I'm talking about 11 myths about self-care and, of course, the facts that are actually true. I want you to make sure to stay with me until the end because number 10 was really surprising to me when I first realized that this was true. So, number 1, the myth is that self-care is all about you. And the truth is that we are not just pillars of individuality in the world. We're actually so connected to everyone else. People that we interact with, our family members or our household members, especially as parents, and just really everyone we interact with, and then everyone that our actions make a difference for, which can be people that we've never seen and will never meet. And so when we take care of ourselves and we're able to begin living from a place of vitality and a place of being filled up with our needs being met and with ourselves not depleted and exhausted and overwhelmed. When we can live from that full sense, we can bring so much more to our interactions, to our decisions. We can be more thoughtful in what we do, and we can interact so much more healthily, in a more healthy way, with the people that are in our lives. So self-care is actually about way more than just us individually. It's about our community and eventually about the world. Myth number 2 is that you can do self-care all by yourself. Now, this is actually also not true for similar reasons. We don't live in vacuums, and we have different responsibilities, and there are going to be challenges that come up in our lives. And as much as the sort of Western United States culture tends to think about people as individuals and assign responsibility to them as individuals, and also requirements and expectations, it's simply not true. We don't live as isolated people. We live in community. And so to be able to care well for ourselves, we need community around us. So perhaps that means that as parents, we're going to need other people in our lives who might be able to step in for childcare while we take care of ourselves in some way. Maybe that just means that we need emotional support for caring for ourselves and not this constant expectation that's being put on us to give to everyone else and not to ourselves. So, truth about self-care, number 2, is that we actually need other people in our lives to be able to care well for ourselves. All right, self-care myth number 3 is that self-care is about pampering your body. And I know especially, it's actually true for all genders, but especially for women, this kind of gets sold as making ourselves look beautiful. And where there's a place for thinking about outward beauty, self-care is so much bigger than outward beauty. And for many of us, the types of things that are suggested or are told to us will make us feel better or are caring for ourselves are actually not helpful for so many reasons that I won't get into today. So self-care can absolutely include our bodies, but it's about so much more than pampering our bodies or trying to make our bodies look or feel a certain way. All right, myth number 4 is that a self-care practice suggested by someone is going to be great for everyone. And that is also similarly untrue. Self-care is really about connecting to our own individual, unique selves and meeting our actual needs, not about what someone else thinks our needs should be, and certainly not following some prescription that's suddenly going to check off all the boxes for self-care. Self-care is actually going to look different for everyone because we all have different unique parts of our personality and different ways that we like to meet the needs that we do have. All right, so, myth number 5 is that self-care is just too time-consuming. We don't have time for that in our busy schedules. And I think this comes from thinking about self-care as an action that we do, and oftentimes an action that might take a lot of time or be at odds with other actions that we might need to do during a day. But true self-care actually can take as little as a few seconds and can really be about how we choose what actions we do allow in our lives and what we do and don't do. True self-care is about really how we approach ourselves and how we give ourselves the care that we need, rather than, especially as women, if you are a woman, meeting everyone else's needs and not also meeting our own. Myth number 6, that self-care is something to put on your to-do list. And I touched on this just a moment ago. But self-care, true self-care, where we're really caring deeply for ourselves, is a way of approaching ourselves. It's a posture towards ourselves, or an attitude. It has to do with our underlying beliefs about our own worth and value. And rather than just something else that's obligatory that we need to put on our to-do list and that we'll probably won't get to, self-care is really about a way of living. It's a way of nurturing ourselves, a way of paying attention to the needs that we have instead of pretending they don't exist and then not meeting them. All right, myth number 7 is that self-care is self-indulgent. And again, we want to just sort of pull back and think about what it really means to take good care of ourselves. Since this is a channel for parents, we could think about how we care for our children. And maybe let's even think about when they're really little. So when they're little and we change their diaper and we feed them and we interact with them and laugh with them. When they're older, when we have conversations with them, and when we're providing that nurture, and then those basic needs, when we bathe them, we don't think of that as indulging our children. We think of that as taking good care of them. And in a similar way, we can think about self-care as taking care of ourselves, just as we would take care of our children, to really attend to our own needs and take good care of those. That is absolutely not self-indulgence. That is simply good care. So similarly, myth number 8 is that self-care is the same thing as treating yourself. And there could be times when treating yourself is part of self-care, but self-care is so much bigger than that, and it's so much not focused on purchasing things or spending money. Now, it's not that you might not spend money. Life sort of requires that in our current world. But treating yourself is kind of a extra, the way that we often think about it is this sort of extra thing to give to ourselves. A little bit like self-indulgence, like we just talked about, but maybe in a more positive light. But self-care can be things that don't feel like a treat at all, and might even be unpleasant in the moment. And so self-care is just so much bigger than just treating ourselves to something nice. All right, and that kind of leads us into myth number 9, that self-care is just too expensive. Now, I know that if you listen to different influencers or you see other YouTube videos, that some people are going to be talking about self-care as something that is very expensive. Maybe they say that, here's these 9 skincare products you need, or you need to do a full self-care day where you go off on a vacation somewhere or something like that. But those things can be part of self-care, and I hope you're seeing a theme here, that self-care is less about the action and more about a way of living. And those things might all be part of self-care, but you don't have to blow your budget. In fact, self-care is not blowing your budget. Taking good care of yourself includes taking good care of your finances. And so spending more than what you have on something that is excessive, or that someone is telling you that you need to take care of yourself, is actually, ironically, not good self-care. So self-care does not need to be expensive. There are tiny things that we can do every day that don't cost any money that we can use to very much increase our quality of life and to care for ourselves. All right, number 10, the one I told you that sort of shocked me the first time I heard it. And this myth is that self-care feels really great. Now, I think there is some truth to this. Self-care does feel good, but it feels good long term. There are definitely a whole category of things that you might do for self-care that won't really feel good while you're doing them. So let's just use the example of like stretching your muscles. There's a amount of stretching that does feel good. And there's an aspect of stretching that feels good, but at the same time, there's a bit of pain that's happening there at the same time. And of course, you don't want to overstretch. So I'm not saying you should stretch to where it hurts, right? As an aside. But when we do the actions that take good care of ourselves, sometimes it's not very fun. You know, going to that doctor's appointment that you've been dreading is not fun, but it is good self-care. Taking the time to cook yourself a yummy, nourishing meal is not always pleasant, and it is good self-care. Cleaning off my desk, for example, is something that I do not look forward to doing, but it really helps me take care of my mindset and my ability to focus. So these are all things that maybe are not exciting to do relationally. Starting a really difficult conversation and dealing with conflict is not pleasant most of the time for most of us, and is also essential self-care. And so I just want you to sort of expand your ideas of what it means to really take good care of ourselves, because sometimes these things are unpleasant in the moment, but they really long-term help us to feel good. They help us to feel connected to our values, to ourselves, and they are true self-care. All right, myth number 11 is that self-care will fix all your problems. I know self-care is super important, and also it's not designed to fix our problems. What it is designed to do is to help us to be more present with the situations that we do encounter in life, and that we can come to those situations with energy and vitality and connection to ourselves, so that we can be better equipped to solve the problems, better equipped to deal with the really difficult things. Self-care will absolutely not solve all of the problems that come to us in life, but it will help us to be more available, more creative, and ultimately to weather them much better than when we are depleted and overwhelmed and exhausted. So those are the 11 myths and facts about self-care. I'll recap them really quickly, just the facts. First, self-care benefits so many more people than just you. Second, you do need other people for self-care. Number 3, self-care is so much more than pampering your body. Number 4, true self-care looks different for everyone. Number 5, self-care doesn't need to be time-consuming. Number 6, self-care is a way of living, not just another thing for your to-do list. Number 7, true self-care is not self-indulgent. Number 8, self-care is also not the same as treat yourself. Number 9, true self-care is inexpensive. Number 10, self-care can feel hard and still be self-care. And number 11, self-care will not fix all your problems. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this has been helpful for you, and maybe will spur a little more reflection and contemplation about how you think about self-care. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your reflections in the comments below. Hit like if this has been a good video for you. Subscribe if you'd like to hear when I release more videos. I hope you have a really wonderful day and take good care.